Yeah, so are we ready? I'd like to welcome you to this Impact Dialogue event. It's part of a series of Impact Dialogues, and we're really fortunate and it's really exciting to be joined by Andrea Baldo, CEO of Mulberry, who will be in dialogue with our KBS academic colleagues, Giana, Eckhardt, and Gillian Brooks. So really excited to hear this. Now, for those of you who it's the first Impact Dialogue event, if I just say a few words about what we've been doing over the last 3 years with this series of dialogues. So we're bringing together academics in dialogue, in conversation and engagement with expert practitioners from the world of business, NGOs, public sector bodies, and also government policy and international organizations like UN agencies. So we're learning a lot through these dialogues. So very active dialogues in person mostly. And if I might just say, we've learned sort of 3 things, and I think these are things to look out for in our conversation today. The first is that we learn a lot straight away about how our innovative research within KBS is directly informing impactful change in a host of organizations and government policy. So we've learned, just to give you some examples, about the way in which HR research, human resource management research, has led to more non-biased HR practices in many organizations. We've learned about how work among our sustainability scholars is informing local partnerships for sustainable energies. And there's a whole suite of government policy change around migration, directly related to our research, BSI standards on modern slavery, healthcare change, and others. So we've learned a lot about how this works in practice. I think the second thing we've learned, which is perhaps more challenging for the academics in the room, is that we hear from practitioners, and hopefully we'll hear today, about what research is needed today and in the future. That can often lead to new relationships being forged. But I think the challenge for our academics is that often those research questions, when they're framed by somebody from outside of our academic narrow discipline, they often involve and require us to think outside the box, across disciplines. So we're often constrained by what we might call the boundary conditions of our theory and our methods. And we have to re-engage with those boundary conditions to make sure that they're fit for real world challenges, especially today with the enormous challenges facing the world at large and the need for urgent research to address those challenges. The third thing I'd say before closing, and the thing I think I like the most about Impact Dialogues, is to really learn about these relationships that academics have forged with expert practitioners outside. We learn about how sometimes there are tensions about short-term, long-term, getting things done quickly outside versus our sort of longer time in framing our research and our writings. Sometimes we use different kinds of language, especially in writing and communications. And but I think most importantly, we learn the art of compromise, and we learn about mutual understanding to figure out how we cross these spheres of academic thinking and writing and expert practice and application. So with that said, I introduce this next Impact Dialogue event, and I'll pass over to Giana and Gillian, who will be chairing and asking questions today. We'll have time at the end also for questions for the audience. Thank you.
So as Damien mentioned, my name is Giana Eckhardt, and this is Gillian Brooks, and we're both in the marketing department here at KBS, and we are truly delighted and honored to have Andrea Baldo with us today, the CEO of Mulberry. And Andrea participated in a study that we were doing last year, I guess it was, on peer-to-peer fashion rental. And Andrea was at Giana at that time, who was, and the brand was one of the ways that you were putting your sustainability initiatives into practice was through being very active in that space. So the insights really informed our analysis, and we can tell you a little bit more about what we found later on if you're interested too. But to start our discussion now, and just to kind of introduce, have everyone become as familiar with what you've been doing, Andrea, as we are. How did you start your career in fashion?
So I stumbled into fashion, completely stumbled. I study econometrics, so I'm an econometrician, with a thesis on it was like environmental impact of general equilibrium modeling for environmental impact. So that's the kind of, so completely far from fashion, very analytical. And then I moved to General Electric, oil and gas, so not sustainable at all. Financial management program. Learned a lot in that 2 years about the finance, and not from an econometric point of view, but from a return on investment and control department and everything you can learn from finance. Then I went to Bain & Company as a consultant. And I'm from Vicenza. Vicenza is the headquarters of Diesel, which is denim, now only the Brave, large group. And suddenly I said, okay, we have a consultant from Vicenza and a company from Vicenza. We have to minimize cost. So I entered into fashion without really thinking that was a career. And then I fell in love because it's a completely different industry, creativity. It's seeing the world from a social angle compared to probably just a consumer angle that you see in consumer packaged goods. And also, I think attracted by what is very different from me, and see also the opportunity for someone that is more, more technical and more organized into a world of creativity. So they offered me then a job after 2 years working with them, and then I start my career in Diesel. And in that different position, I pivot from what was called what we call today chief of staff, or kind of a strategic planner. Now, when the consultant comes in, do a little bit of everything based on the project that you had. No sustainability project at the time. We're talking 2001, 2002, so that was not on the radar. And then I pivot in general management, some of the business unit, and then I pivot in CEOs, and now I'm the CEOs of the third company now. I'm the CEO here at Mulberry. So that is how I got into it, and I still love this industry. Very agnostic. I sold 3-pack underwear at Selfridges for 24 pounds, and no, Furs and Chinese private room for 45,000 pounds. It's completely agnostic on it, and so we can talk about fast fashion or luxury. I love more the industry and the fact that people make choice from a social point of view. They want to message something when they wear, what they wear, and that is, I think, what is very interesting.
Amazing. So based on sort of varied career, if you will, how have you seen the evolution of sustainable fashion?
So I think the first time I saw it, I would say, was like from brands. I think Stella was one of the leader at the beginning of trying to push this. Probably was not environmental at the beginning, was animal welfare into the topic, and obviously as a brand as Diesel, we're looking at these opportunities, but it was really about differentiation. So it's like a market differentiation strategy. You take a kind of areas that nobody really talk about, and you make a distinction out of it. And then little by little, as denim clearly was at high consumption of water, sandblasting back in the last 90s. So practice was not correct, that you start seeing the supply chain trying to optimize that. So laser printer or other things came to avoid having that kind of effect. And some brands actually start moving in that domain. I think the first brand I saw that they did a kind of transparency of supply chain was G-Star in the Netherlands. So you see brands that little by little start having, and then the first time I saw a material that was innovative, that innovation was like waste from food material converted into something that looked like leather. I was at Marni in 2012, 2013. So I saw this from brand perspective to practices in the supply chain to innovation of material. But then when I really, what I can talk today about sustainability, I really learned it about that. I think the opportunity of running a Danish company where, from a marketing perspective, being from Copenhagen has an opportunity of creating advantage by embracing sustainability or responsibility, as we call it, makes that not just a marketing important, but talk about marketing brand purpose-led, it becomes actually permeate everything we've done. And being in Copenhagen, which is also the city where Global Fashion Agenda is hosted, obviously was an opportunity for me to engage with probably in a way that will be very difficult from Milan or from Rome.
Great. So turning towards Mulberry specifically, how would you describe Mulberry's vision for sustainability in the luxury fashion sector?
When I made my due diligence, joining the company, I joined like 7 months ago. This part of being advanced in responsibility practices with the Made to Last manifesto, it was one of my decision criteria. Too complex, so I'm trying to re-engineer that because there is sometimes when you talk about sustainability, it's a complex topic which has a lot of different avenues. But the job we have to do is to make it clearer and easier to understand. So otherwise, it's just for the technicians. So at the end, I will capture our objectives for the next 5-10 years in 3 parts. So one is climate. So we have to actually reduce our carbon emission, like all the other players. We have set some standard before my arrival based on 2019 numbers. That is an area where we can, I think some of you are familiar with Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3. So Scope 1 is what you control. Scope 2 is actually just outside what your people, how they commute, come into the office. And that Scope 3 is actually where you buy materials and energy. So the Scope 3 is the big part of it for all the companies. So for fashion, it's around 90%, for us 90%. So there's a lot about what we can control with the decision we make. So for example, one thing I'm implementing, 2 things. One is more trivial, but give a message. No red meat paid on any expense report, anybody at Gianni. As a B Corp, we need to practice and preach. And so as red meat has a huge implication for carbon emission, we already use leather, which is a byproduct of that, but we cannot. So that is a small things, but set the tone that if you are a B Corp player and you have that kind of part of culture, you need to make that kind of choices. And the other one is to in everything we spend, so no matter if it is buying chairs or going to Meta and buy advertising, they need to give us the credibility in terms of what they are doing to reduce their emissions. Because what I discovered in Mulberry, very different than Gianni, is that when you do high quality product, the product quantity are very low. So because the quantity are very low, the impact of your supply chain is much lower than when you produce millions of products. So it means that the choice that you made on other suppliers actually have an even bigger impact. So now for us, when we have, for example, stores development or even marketing or advertising, the money we spend there needs to be actually linked with a reduction impact. And so we need to ask our suppliers to provide us that kind of credibility and eventually make that decision point. So you have quality, you have cost, time, and now you have also that. So will be a practice that we are implementing. So this is where it's about kind of climate impact and reduction of it. There is a second aspect, which is circularity. And that comes very easy for a product that lasts forever. It can be repaired, it can be repurposed. We have an exchange program already launched. To give you a sense, we produce in the UK 40,000 handbags, and we have 10 to 12,000 handbags repairing on a yearly basis. So let's give you a sense that this is a brand that, compared to Chanel or other, can embrace that kind of circularity. It's not by chance that yesterday we launched our new campaign, and we have recycled product or pre-loved product in our campaign. You will see more of that coming. I think that this is a differentiation point for us to actually create that kind of liaison between the past and the future. So there's a lot about circularity. So reusing, repurposing, and if we can also getting back product and not, I don't see rental for us like it was for Gianni, but then the third part is the community part. So it's the community because first, it's not the sustainability is not solved by one brand, but we have to work with others, as I explained. There is also kind of defend the proper positioning of made in UK, which is a kind of more sustainable practices or more advanced from a social point of view, which is for us is extremely important. So we are really big wage suppliers and provider both in our supply chain, in our own factories, but also in the supply chain in Turkey. So that is a big part. And because when you link the two, you know that the climate has a social impact. And so you cannot solve one without the other, and that's why community is the part. So it's climate, it's circularity.
And has your personal view of sustainability evolved since being at Mulberry?
Yeah, I think in two ways. First, Gianni is first is volume. So we're talking millions products. Here we're talking about 200,000 max a year. So it's quality versus quantity. So the impacts change. So in that, it was a lot about innovation in material. If you don't get the material right, it is a big part of your carbon emission. So for that reason, leather was banned in Gianni when I entered, because it has a huge impact when you look at it from not just from byproduct of the red meat, but in general as an industry. So we're trying to get out of it. While here, it's completely different. It's really 25%, probably 30% comes only from my supply chain. All the rest is how we invest and how we spend money to run the company. So it's a very different point. And the other things is fashion versus made to last. I mean, Gianni is a fashion brand, so we need to do newness in order to generate demand and also to create trend and appetite. Here, my icons represents probably 65%, 70% of my business. And so it's more about preserving your icons product that has a high price point and make that interesting. But we are not a fashion brand, so I don't have the problem of getting with newness. And newness is actually what provides you to buy. Actually, today, Basewater is the best sold brand. And the product is 2003 design, has been relaunched now with recently, and so it's a very different kind of position and problem from a sustainable point of view.
And how do you educate consumers on making more sustainable choices when buying luxury goods?
Yeah, in Mulberry, it's actually part of the storytelling. So we can see from our numbers every time in social media we shows something that is about repurposes, the exchange program, or our manufacturing is where we get most of the engagement. So we are using social media a lot to showcase what is behind the make-off of the luxury product and why is the product made for last and why you have to make the investment for it. That's why it doesn't cost Coach price points. So it's a way to explain that. But it's also to protect the premium, but it's also a way to educate the consumer. Then we are really proud that we take a lot of effort in selecting the raw materials. So the leather we are using, we're trying to use the best in terms of certified gold standard tanneries, tanners that has low impact. And so the information about the product needs to go to the stores, and the stores are our touch points because it's a business where 90% of the business is direct to consumer. Of these, 40% is online. So online, obviously, we have our own, our online website, all the explanation about the product and the product description, and in the part of the website. The other maybe 50%, 45 is in the stores. And so the store relationship is the other aspects that works. And in the stores, we have also areas for the exchange. So if you go to Regent Street, for example, which is our flagship, you have a part of the stores where you can find a pre-loved bag that has been repurposed by us and brought back from customers. And so the customer can see actually and touch what it means to buy new or buy actually kind of second-hand.
So you do that within the store rather than through, say, Vestiaire Click or something?
Yes, we do it directly. And that is something that it's a little bit what I discovered at Gianni. And I think we discussed during that breakfast. That is the opportunity for the brand to own the relationship beyond the transaction. I think it's it's a little bit like the e-commerce. When I saw the e-commerce coming, nobody was buying online because you cannot touch the product, you cannot buy. So even the brand were really, really reluctant. So you have to have these hooks and a porter entrance trying to actually anticipate what would have been a change in the consumer. And that was 2001 when Federico Marchetti came to visit me and Renzo. So it's really 25 years later now. It's pretty clear who we know. The brand on is there, the margin, there, the consumer. But for 20 years, we had all these matches all around trying to enter in. I think we should have learned the lessons as a brand that if the consumer is changing, and I see it changing clearly, in making more responsible choice by buying what we call second-hand or pre-loved, that's the brand domain immediately. I don't need intermediaries, because if you come and you buy and you choose me, I need to provide you these in the stores at the same time. Now, it's difficult for some brands, and that I think is the areas where Mulberry has an edge. It's difficult for a brand that has been created this kind of luxury world where exclusivity, royalty, everything is it, and then you see the advertising Chanel, the iconic bag. The airport, so where is the luxury gone? I mean, I think we completely lost it. So the fact that the industry is in trouble is not just price points and China and West. There is a lot of other things that has been probably moving the industry towards consumer goods, and so for some brands that has always played that kind of exclusivity, it's hard to make a second hand in the stores. But second hand is happening. To go to what is a loop generation in stores, 2 stores. It was like a store was half of this room. Now it's 2 floors. You enter, it looks like a luxury store. I opened the second one on Copenhagen, and you get if you know what you buy, obviously, because if you don't know, if you know what you buy, you have a Saint Laurent denim, 120 pounds. Like, it's going to stay in your wardrobe forever. And you will love it forever. So why you have to buy a new? So I think that is where natural consumer is going, because of the price, because of the sustainability choice, because there's so much offer there that needs to go. And I think we want to be ahead of the game and be part of this conversation immediately. So I'm protecting that and not playing with others, trying to create what is today 1% of the business in UK. I think it can scale to 10% of the business in a profitable way. And if I can do profitable, then I have a model that is circular and profitable, which is something that is hard sometimes to cope.
And what responsibility do you think Mulberry has as sort of this heritage brand in sort of shaping consumers to be more sustainable?
I think the heritage is
Yeah.
because you are an heritage brand and you are in the business for 55 years now, you have a moral obligation, I think, now to showcase what is going to be in the next 5 to 50 years. And for us, even more important, because what I did in the last 6 months is really go back to the Mulberry spirit and the roots and understand where the brand was coming from, which is very important when you are relaunching a brand. And I discovered that Roger Sold was probably ahead of his time, because he was thinking that first he started business by taking leftover material from clubs, because that's his area of Somerset, and doing chokers and belts, and that's his start. So he started with the circularity already. And then a lot of his tenure in the first, I think was starting 2070, 2090, it was really about creating a kind of circular model where a lot of profit were going back locally to community. And so the ethos of the brand was already into we are a community. And probably being from Somerset, and I'm from Vicenza, so Vicenza is the headquarters of Bottega Veneta, so there is a kind of thing. But if you come from the outside of Milan, London, and you come from rural agriculture, you know the community is important, the families. And that's in a way was in the beginning of the brand in the 70s. So I'm discovering that and making it probably modern, but I'm just taking things that actually was already seeded by the founder back then. So,
I love that.
So we have this kind of moral obligation now to be respectful of what was the founder, but also be respectful because the brand has an heritage and has another 50 years in front of us. So we need to behave like an adult.
And where do you see Mulberry in 5 years in terms of sustainability initiatives?
Yeah. So one area that, and I'm new to this, so some of the things I was learning was, okay, where is it the farming of the cow that is most impactful? And the end is the production. So it's a production facility. So the tanneries and the production facilities to have a delivery energy. But there is something, it all starts with farming, with the being, feeding with grass. And or probably you don't, but most of the leather issue is that is linked to deforestation in some part of the world. And there is not so transparency on where the material is coming from, so where the animal was from. So in luxury, we have to have that kind of transparency. So it's mandatory for us to do that. And in doing that, there is an opportunity to work with, I would say, regenerative agricultural farming, which actually can capture some of the CO2 emission that we create, with the production. This is nobody's talking about. Obviously, in cotton, organic cotton, now regenerative cotton, all these areas start getting more interesting because we discovered that probably organic cotton is not as good as regenerative cotton because it's as you said, it's a research areas where we learn things as they go. I think there's a part of regenerative farming where as the cow has been grown and then slaughtered and then go in production, the way we farm that can actually get some credit from carbon emission. So it can actually absorb carbon, so the soil can absorb carbon, and how we can make that part of our calculations in carbon emission can be a way in which within the supply chain we support the kind of circular. So that's an area where we are targeting. So in the next 5 years, what I would like to be my dream, that we have more actually leather coming from that kind of regenerative farming. And if I can get more of that farming out of the UK, so I can actually use hides that are produced here, I can also reduce like my carbon emission in supply chain. So there's a kind of laboratory we are trying to set up to support that kind of activities. Now, it's going to be 0.1%, 2%. But the important thing that we found the solution, and then as I saw at Gianni, when you start measuring and bringing the entire company around the objectives, is that where the value is unleashed. So when the designers start seeing that, okay, we care about price, we care about beauty, but we care about are we doing a little bit better than last season in terms of using the material or not? Nobody wants to have a negative. And so little by little, so in Gianni, we went from almost 0 or 2% recycled nylon or recycled, I would say, responsible material, 98% in 5 years. That was in 10 years. So I think we can start small and then little by little we can guide it to. But yes, it's not just us. It needs to be, other, and go back to the community, other parts and other stakeholders needs to work with us in the same.
And with those stakeholders, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges that the industry needs to face to be truly sustainable?
The cost.
Yeah.
So who paid investment for them to start? And we are small players, no? And so for some of the tanneries, for example, we are too small because they produce for car manufacturers. Can you imagine how many square meter or square feet of leather they consume compared to all these? So there is a scale issue, and then there is the economic effect of it. So who is ready to pay? And probably that's the big challenge, no? Because are we ready to pay as a consumer? No, we don't. I don't. Probably the answer is depends. 20% of the consumer that are ready to pay premium. And I did an experiment at Gianni. We had the same bags in black, one with bio-based material made of coffee and orange skin, and the other one was recycled leather. One was offered at the 345 pounds, and the other one 445. So it's material difference, not 10%. 20% of customers go for the bio-based one. And it was the same in the stores when they can touch it, or the same online. So Gianni community had 20% of customers who really paid 30% just to get something. Now, probably it's not for all brands, but definitely there is a customers for that. But usually customers are not ready to pay. Can I go and I'm a public company and say to my shareholders, sorry, we're going to have a 3% impact on top of tariff because I want to do sustainable? As a public company, the investor will take the money and go somewhere else, and they will just sue me because I'm not used. So you understand that from a profit perspective, it's an issue. And are we going to vote somebody to say more taxes to support sustainable transition? So we are the same people in the room. So you see how the systematic issue is systematic. So it means that more people need to do trade-off decisions. But at the end, it's really how can we make probably easier for the consumer to choose one thing instead of another. So for the passport, yes, good. Start measuring. Do you want an A-level flat or a G-level flat on energy or the appliances? Can we have something like that that can help me decide? Because probably it's a big, small part, but it will be a part of my decision-making process. Can we ban finally 99.99 press on advertising? Because I was born that Senna was driving in a Marlboro car. I don't see Marlboro anymore. So why these externalities that are captured in 1999? And it seems, I don't want to oversimplify, but when you go to the suppliers, they ask you, why don't you pay £1 more for it? And I'm able to do this investment. And they're like, no, there is a competition. I cannot. So you see, the system doesn't work. So let's start banning that. So then you cannot do advertising like that anymore because that's actually is a communication of externalities. When I see in the subway, Shane, 25% off, 60% off on Shane, 60% off, and they can advertise. They cannot advertise. So who make these rules? These are the rules that are going to change a little bit how we behave. And so it's CEO needs to do better choice. The government needs to implement different policies, and probably we need to raise tax or raise the malus that goes when you act in a way that is against sustainability. So it's a big issue, and I don't think we have found the solution. Also, you think about global supply chain. Supply chain of this material comes from not from mine, but maybe Brazilian leather that goes to be done in Vietnam and produced in Vietnam and then is shipped to US. You have a global supply chain, so it's really complex, and that's where I think at the end is about the founder and the CEOs. And when I said that, because I made 1,000 trade-off decision in a year. Should we invest a little bit more here or here? This morning, should we invest 15,000 more in performance marketing in China in order to deliver the more budget or not? No, it's obviously a team decision, but this is so we are used to do trade-off decision between short-term and long-term. So probably we are used to actually just embed some of the decision into our business practices. Now, if government say, if you make this decision, you get the tax break. If you get the decision, you get that is an incentive. So if it incentivizes me to make better decision, then can I actually provide better solution for the consumer? So the consumer finally can choose between different things and the communication to the consumer. But you see, there's a lot of things, but I think that the CEOs are actually a little bit the touch point between governance, and people, and the people in the team are also my consumers. So I believe that this is a vocation that we have to bring as CEOs.
And if you could change just one thing about the luxury fashion industry's approach to sustainability, what would it be?
Probably back to my point before is that you need to take care of the product after you sold it. If you are a luxury brand and so you are buying, the margin is very high. It's a product that is expensive, so it's not a commodity. So it's definitely something that is discretionary. You have an impact because you produce it. You have to take care until the product is finished. And so that should be part of your cost structure, the way you have recycling. And I think that will be probably an unlock because it will allow all brands, no matter where you are positioning, to take care of the aftercare and the after sales. And suddenly it becomes an opportunity for second hand in a way that is more branded and more curated than actually, it's Century 21 or TK Maxx here, where obviously it's a different shopping experience, and everybody buying luxury likes that kind of shopping experience.
So we're just gonna have one more question before we open it to, I guess, our community to answer some questions. So given this is an impact dialogue, what types of research or academic partnerships do you think are more urgently needed to help the sort of sustainability of luxury fashion? Just a small question to
Yes. Because I would say consumers. We have tons of consumers. I think that's not anymore. I'm making up completely, I guess. So could be something on, for example, one of the problems we had at Gianni was the commitment. So if you want the supplier to make investment in order to be more sustainable, they need more stable business. And obviously we are in fashion where it's not the demand is not so forecastable. So there is any way I think we can work on contracts, optional contracts, buying power between different suppliers, for example, instead of customers, instead of competing, where actually we can reduce the amount of risk for who is in the value chain. Because in a way, when you think about the value chain of luxury, the profit is all on the brand side. Look at the supply chain. I mean, who in the supply chain is going to make a lot of money? I mean, all the luxuries are buying their own. Chanel is buying all the suppliers, they're buying the farming of crocodiles. So it means that they have money and they operate. So either you are an end-to-end partner where at this point you are required to be sustainable end-to-end because you control the entire supply chain. But if you don't control the supply chain and the margins in the brand, clearly there must be a redistribution of this profit. And if it's not done because it's a global supply chain, probably there is a way to create contracts that allow large players to go to one suppliers and not competing on price, but competing on innovation. So color, design, everything else, and take some of the risk out. Now, this is a limit of, I think, negotiation, mathematical, I don't know, there's politics, but I think that will solve a lot of problems because otherwise we are naturally the capitalistic system oblige you to jump to a supplier that is a little bit more than you. And that competition, if the price is not transparent and the externalities are not in the price, then you keep doing decisions that are not actually sustainable. So how we can capture that externality into a price that is equal for everybody, and how can we create a buying power that actually reduce the and say that make it more constant, the supplying part, so that we can make investment as 10 years, 20 years of investment. With that part would be something. I haven't seen anything discussing. I've seen a lot of NGOs trying to do that, they try to bring together different partners. But yes, an academic study on that and how to make it happen, how that can be benefit. I think there's a banking system that will take a risk out of it. So what is the cost of capital for that investment? If you take the risk out, probably cost of capital is a little bit lower. That will not be possible for the supplier without that kind of demand. So I think there is something there that can unlock.
So we want to give you all a chance to add. I know I have so many follow-up questions, but we want to open it up to the audience. So if you have some questions for Andrea, please, yes.
Right. I'm interested in the comment you made earlier about your product turnover being smaller than some of the big fashion brands. And therefore, I'm interested in the relative proportion of the environmental impact on your core product versus the other things that you do, particularly in the context of marketing. So to put my cards on the table, we work on pop-up events and exhibitions and displays for luxury brands.
Yeah.
So we, as you mentioned, we have there's an onus on us to show our environmental credentials. And I'm interested in actually how much difference does that make? We want to do that, I mean, for our own benefit and for others, our clients, but how much difference does that actually make compared with what you're doing as your core business, making bags, clothes?
Yeah, so I take the numbers that are public in our responsibility report. So I'm not challenged, even if I have to still studying much more. When you look at our sustainability report and you look at scope 3, so scope 1, scope 2, as I said, is around 10%. So 90% is scope 3. When you go scope 3, only 25 to 30% is production. So sourcing of material, production, and so all the rest, it's how we operate. So how we spend money in the company. And obviously 2 areas are the largest, actually 3 areas. The rent, in the supply chain is the rent. So is the landlord doing anything else? Is the building we are in on responsible? So this is a big part of our P&L. The second one is people, obviously. So, for example, how we commute, do we give opportunity, do we compensate the commuting, how we travel inside the company? And then the last part is marketing. Marketing is a huge part. And in marketing, there's everything. The pop-up stores, the event, the campaign we shoot, everything. And that's, in our industry, is it can go to up to 20% of the sales in a DTC company where we have a lot of performance marketing in order to generate demand. So there's a lot of going into Meta, Google, or in the luxury, it's around 10%, 6 to 12%. That part, when I look at my environmental impact, is like 20%. So it's almost like the same size of the product. When I said, are you sure that it's like that? Oh, yeah. I show you the calculation that has been done by, I think, we have a third party, UK, that is doing this, which is telling me, do we have the right data? Probably we have a data issue as an econometrics, because I think, I don't know. But they use a kind of very simple calculation, saying how much money you spend on a specific level will tell you how much kilos of CO2 emission that the connection of the two isn't clear to me, but that's it. So if you look at that area, then marketing is definitely as important as production for trying to reduce my carbon emissions. So I need to talk to all my suppliers in marketing and understand what are you doing next year to improve your carbon emission, because I have an objective to halve my carbon emission in 5 years. If you don't do your part, I cannot not do marketing. So, and that is starting the conversation. And for me, it's a little bit of a new. When you were asking what is new, because for me it was, oh my God, if I don't make the material more responsible, if I don't find a way to actually work on my supply chain from farming using recycled material and so on, yes, I need to work on everything else. But it's not the return of online that is going to solve it. This is the 80%. In this case, in Mulberry case, where the production is not big and the quality is high, so everything is there, it's almost taken care of, then the other decisions are becoming important, and marketing is a big part of my budget.
Yes, please.
Thank you so much for coming in. I wanted to ask, so it's really exciting to hear that you offer kind of the second-hand pre-loved sales in your London store. Is that something that you offer worldwide? Like, do you think consumers in other countries are receptive to that kind of thing?
Yes, we have it in New York, we have it in Seoul, so it's definitely transversal. It's becoming also a point of differentiation, and in a way, it's naturally catering to a younger crowd. Who is? I have a theory, but it's not a theory. Sorry, I should not say theory. Academic. So I have that probably who make a responsible choice sometimes needs to know what is buying, because you're still buying a 700 euro or a 200 or $150 jeans, which is not, it's luxury for all. So clearly, who is buying that? It's a more the culture of fashion or culture of luxury different. And I think the young generation have their, like all the young generation has their own opinion on how they should wear, what should they behave. So they're part of the tribe, but they're also very, very individualistic. And they are able now, with the information that they got mobile, to really understand the different brands. And so they go for it. they do the research, and then when they go, they know what they're buying. This is not for my generation. That is more fast. We have kids, we have our things, the family, all the parents. So you are in a moment where you can actually make more of these choices. And so we saw it in our stores that anecdotally, it's slightly younger customers that are more interested. And when they post it also on social media, if they mixing with other brands in a way that for us is extremely interesting. And that is the other areas where my strategy is going, which is this, how can I get younger customer without, I'm a Gen Z, or it needs to be natural. And I think that the exchange is a way to get that kind of customers into our stores. And that's true not only in the UK, but in the US and the other regions.
Do you mind
Yeah.
waiting, Daniel?
No, I'll wait, of course.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you for the talk. It was incredibly insightful. You discussed the importance of community and the group effort in the luxury industry. And I was just wondering, are there any brands that you feel have inspired you on the level of a CEO that have used any specific sustainability initiatives in the sector or outside of it?
I was very lucky to run Danny. And I absolutely don't want to take the credit of Nikolai Rashpur, the founder, the creative director, and all the team. I'm also moved from Italy to Copenhagen, so suddenly open up there. So, but we won the Time 100 most sustainable and more advanced brands. It's where I saw for the first time. It's probably not something unusual in fashion, which is a great brand where your employee are your customers, your customer are your employee. So you don't actually getting an opportunity to work for us and getting free dresses is what you want. So that and was the same in this. So it's something that for marketing is pretty clear in our industry. But how that was also linked with we want to change the world. We are here to hack the fashion system. This kind of digital hacking things, oh my God, and still goes wrong today. So, and that's, it's culture. We haven't talked about it. It's culture, the culture of the company, culture of the people. And culture goes around totem, goes around leaders, goes around the executive committee that needs to behave in a certain way. And so in Ghana, for example, we had, when you enter, we had like a glass box with mushroom growing from our waste of our coffee. Because, I didn't know, but Denmark is the second per capita coffee drinker, consumer. And so we had tons of coffee waste. So coffee waste become mushroom, and then we harvest the mushroom and we eat it at the cafeteria. So that level of circularity has no impact from a percentage, but from a cultural perspective, that's a talking point of everybody entering. So this company is different than anybody else. I saw it only there. I haven't seen that. I see on the other side, naked is the number one option. Otherwise, we are the second. That's the marketing aspect. Of that, I've seen a lot, but that's not culture. In fact, talk about what happened in the culture. I think it is the first time I see the culture built on that. Where, so I was very lucky. Honestly, very lucky.
Damien?
So just a question about the expansiveness of your sustainability thinking. I think we're getting more and more attuned to the fact that when we use AI, it's got environmental consequences, right? And in Britain, it's now true that the giant data centers are part of our critical national infrastructure. I just learned this yesterday in Britain. So they have privileged access to electricity and more controversially to the water in our reservoirs, right? So it's all getting very interesting. And I'm just wondering whether that's on your radar. So I'm sure people in your company are using AI for 100 different things. But how do we think about the environmental impacts of our, every time we do use AI for tasks and other?
Probably, we go back to the point, it's tech infrastructure will be probably the second part after marketing, and we start capturing that cost. We make that decision, an important decision for us. So capturing the data and put it into carbon emission, I think is one. Then how you go versus an innovation like this, technological exchange like this. So I don't have the answer. Probably.
Maybe it's a call for new research.
Yeah. You are much better equipped than me to go back, 100 year, 200 year technological change that actually have a big impact on externalities, other things. And we produce, energy like nuclear power that are actually not impactful. We can have energy forever, and that's not a problem anymore. So it's also what I found on leather. Just to give you a sense, the leather in Giana were not there because of the carbon emission. There's a way to absorb all the carbon emission of the industry. That's not a problem anymore. So I'm cynical on. I'm not cynical on the using of leather. No, we should not use leather. No, it's actually the impact of that. So if the impact of AI or technical infrastructure will explode in terms of clearly create a problem for a company like me, then I need to still reduce my emission. But then it means that somebody needs to find a way to produce energy, because I don't think we can stop using AI altogether unless we ban it like in Mulberry country. Mulberry has no AI anymore.
We're going to just take one more question, I think, in the back.
Thank you. I'm interested to hear about your perspective on the intention action gaps. There's a lot of surveys talking about a growing desire for consumers to shop sustainably, but then the reality is they're not following through on that intent. It'd be great to get your point of view of why that might be.
Yeah, because when you ask if you want to do good, you do good, and then when you are thinking about what you need, probably sometimes it's happened that you are traveling and you are buying a purchase in a different environment. I think that's so to me is saying that the customers need to change the behavior and they are the bad one because they're buying Shane and so on. I don't think that's the reality, the solution. I think it's how we can embed sustainability into the product so that you make choices at point of sales that are a little bit more intelligent. So product passport is one when you have to select between two products, or you need to know that today greenwashing, rack point, different way to calculate it. I mean, it's a consumer, unfortunately, I have no idea. So probably responds a little bit better if he has time to do research on brand and then start putting brand in the basket, like when you do organic food shopping, then you start keep buying the product that you know. So I think is a problem of the brand on how to improve their credentials. So I don't think we can solve that issue.
All right, very last question. Please go ahead.
Something following on from the question. I know like some of the larger brands like Gucci or Balenciaga or whatever, they're more moving into like digital fashion. And obviously I don't know whether they're doing it for sustainability reasons, but there are kind of arguments that digital fashion can be more sustainable in terms of like say reproduction or like shortens the supply chain and etc. So I just kind of wondered if Mulberry would kind of have plans to venture into that, or what your general opinion is.
How do you define digital fashion? Like the opportunity to buy products that are not physical, but they are digital product, digital replica. Yeah. So I think from other brands, I have again opinions. One opinion is that obviously prototyping was a very manual work, and now probably Nike doesn't use prototyping, it's all digital. So there is a lot of digitalization of the prototyping, which allow reducing cost and digitalize a lot of the assets. What you do with all these assets digitally, now you can sell it. So there's a way of actually doing that. We were discussing with our head of wholesale. Should we present the product in the showroom, or should we do a digital presentation? Because say Marc Jacobs is all digital now. Yes, Marc Jacobs is all digital, good. I want them to touch the product, and because the storytelling I have today is that they need to see what different it is. When you are an established brand and you go on, say on repeat, I mean, as I said, 60%, 65% of the business score icons product, you don't need to see the product to buy it back. So definitely I see that opportunity. So I think that is a reason why we go digital. If the customers buy digital, gaming for sure. When you start buying things in games you wanted, I start seeing, I was a gamer, obviously, I was a nerdy because I was a econometrician, so you can imagine how nerdy I am. I'm a speed cuber, so all these things you can get. I start seeing playing in the airport, in the plane, so people young, not so young people, but generation not mine that start playing. So probably there is a way of portraying yourself into the games that you want that. How this is going to be big, I don't know. To me, it's more of a fashion social test. You want to be there when things happening, in Roblox, you want to learn these things. I don't think there is a sustainable angle. It's probably a spin to another reason. I don't think my kids that are buying for Roblox, they are thinking about the sustainability impact on their choices.
Great. So I'd like to turn it over now to the Dean of King's Business School, Stephen, to wrap up our session.
I mean, from the YouTubing to the Dean speaking.
Well, thank you to, of course, thank you to Andrea for coming in today. Thank you for being so open about your experience at Mulberry and about your career. It was fantastic to hear that. Thank you to everyone who's come today, and of course to Gillian and Giana for organising this session today. I'm just going to return to the 3 points that I think you made, Damien, at the very beginning about the purpose of these impact, collaborations and discussions. And I think your last point was about building relationships and networks. And I think that's something that is very important to us within the business school. I think happily the days of when the academy and industry were in two separate worlds has gone, as I think this conversation has illustrated. It'd be fantastic to involve you and involve Mulberry more in what we're doing in the school, so maybe we can continue that conversation. I think the second point you made was about the way in which the world is messy and complicated, and the way that we sometimes see the world within academia is not exactly how practitioners or how the world sees it. And I really felt that your own journey really brought that out. I mean, moving from econometrics to fashion, into oil and gas, into consultancy, and then your career, that shows that we shouldn't follow our narrow railway tracks and silos, but we need to sort of imaginatively move into different domains. So that's a fantastic lesson for all of us. And then I think your third point, Damien, was about innovation. We can match a little bit some of the innovation. We have a vegan cafe at the top here in this building, but we're not yet growing mushrooms, so we'll take a look at that. But I mean, you touched on so many important points about what you're doing in the circular economy, about pre-loved goods, what you're doing in terms of the opportunities and challenges. I absolutely recognise the point about making 1,000 trade-offs. I don't know if it was a day, a week, or a month, something like that, but very much recognise that. But also, some of the really important systemic issues you're raising about global value chains, externalities. I think that's a challenge for all of us. So thank you very much for coming in. We'll continue the conversation over lunch, and thank you to everyone who's come today.
Thank you.